I'll call this policy committee of the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District, Thursday, May 9th at 5:31, now in session. Thank you. Will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Director Sailors,
I am here.
Director Clark, Director Sheets. And for the record, Director Costa will be absent for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have the public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within committee scope, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers tonight?
No speaker cards. Do we have anyone online wishing to make a comment?
There are no attendees at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have any questions about the consent agenda tonight?
I have none.
No questions. I'll take a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Director Sailors,
I'll say aye.
Director Clark, Director Sheets. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Presentation items tonight. Number one is the revised administration policy 02.020.04 reinstatement hire policy. Our presenter is Manager Melissa Maddox from the HR department. Good evening.
Good evening, directors, Chief House. Tonight, as you said, I am bringing you the revisions to the reinstatement rehire policy. If you recall, this was brought to the policy committee back in August of 2023. Since then, we've had a few more revisions from the EMS division and from the payroll division, just some things we noticed as we were implementing this policy. For instance, in this policy, just to back up a little bit, this policy is guidelines to employees who either voluntarily terminate employment in good standing and wish to return to their previous position held, or and the rehire guidelines for employees who have been released from employment but have been recommended to return in a lower rank. And an example of that would be someone that's released from the fire academy, but they were used to be one of our MMPs, so they can request to be rehired as an MMP. Versus someone that's asking to be reinstated, may have been gone for a couple years, maybe it went to a different agency, then if as long as it's within 5 years, they can come and request through the fire chief to be reinstated. So a little bit, two different things, but same policy. If you look on page 7 of the policy, under the employment reinstatement, that's the highlighted changes are the EMS, the revisions requested by the EMS division, just to clarify the guidelines needed to reinstate a paramedic. So it just has to do with some of the county accreditation items. And just like to implement more of a process when we're reinstating people who may hold a paramedic license. Some of the payroll changes include just the clarification on page, let's see, on page 9, under the rehire, there was just some clarification that payroll wanted on there. As far as rehired employees, starting over at step 1, because they are being rehired, not reinstated. So there's just a difference there, and they just wanted that to be clarified. Those were the two main revisions of this policy. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have regarding this.
So for the paramedics, so say somebody leaves, they go to a different agency and they're not working as a paramedic, is there any type of a minimum, like that they've had to have a year's previous, or, I mean, what if they're not practicing medicine for 5 years?
Right. All that will go through the EMS division. They'll kind of do an assessment to make sure, maybe reassess their skills, make sure their paramedic license is in good standing, all that. And they'll put them through kind of a return to work kind of program just to make sure their skills are at the level they need to be.
Is there like, are they on probation or anything like that?
It depends on the timeline, how long they've been gone, but they would generally serve, I believe it's I should know that off the top of my head. I think it's in here somewhere. So if they've been gone more than 12 months, they will serve a 1-year probation. Less than 12 months, they would only serve 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I have a question. What if this person is laid off because of, we
The
have to
downturn.
cut staffing?
Different rules would probably apply.
Is
That,
that handled in a different policy?
Yes, it's actually in the MOU. So there's different guidelines and rules that would revolve around layoffs, totally separate from this
Thank you.
policy.
Thank you. That's what I need to look up then. Thank you. All right, so we just go into the next presentation item, number 2, revised administration policy 02.015.03 sick leave, because you are also presenting
Yes.
that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this policy has been in the works for more than a year. As you can tell, if you flip through it, there's a ton of revisions and changes and movements. But I do want to start off by thanking Michelle Mahoney, who was diligent on working on this for over a year, with legal counsel, with 522, trying to figure out how all the laws intertwine with each other, how they connect with FMLA and CFRA. The sick leave laws in California have gotten very, 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 very complicated. So we did need to reach out to general counsel or to a legal counsel to say, can you help us, make this right? And then the second part of that was trying to implement it and make sure we're following all the rules. So I just wanted to thank Michelle for all her hard work on that. So I normally don't like to read things, but I don't want to leave anything out. There was many different reasons why this policy was revised and a lot of revisions, as you can see. So the initial review of the policy was, as I said, facilitated back in 2023 due to California's update to include designated person to the CFRA list. If you remember, we brought the CFRA policy to the policy committee to explain the designated person under CFRA. Now you can designate a person that's not necessarily a family member once a year. So like I said, in conjunction with legal counsel, HR performed a full review of the policy, which brought a few additional items to our attention that needed to be addressed. Some of those items include Assembly Bill 2017, which went into effect in 2021, which changed the way an employee can designate their protected sick leave entitlement. An employee's protected sick leave entitlement is equal to half of what they would accrue in a year. So for instance, firefighters accrue 288 hours. Half of that is considered protected under the law. Protected meaning they can use it anytime, any place, no questions asked, no doctor's notes requested, nothing like that. It's totally protected, just like FMLA. Our current sick leave policy had, the district had designated all initial sick leave usage as protected, and then they would go into the unprotected arena after they used 144 hours. However, with the new laws, it specifically states that an employee needs to have the opportunity to designate it as protected or unprotected at their choice. So that was seems like a minor change, but it was kind of a big change on how we processed all the other leaves along with the sick leave. So we had to do many meetings with legal counsel. We did meet with 522 many times, and I do want to thank them for their collaboration on this. It went pretty smoothly, I'd say. And we got to a point where we finally had the policy done. So the other changes, like I said, the employee can now designate it themselves as unprotected, or sorry, is protected. But the biggest part of that was when they get into the unprotected realm. Now we are in conjunction with 522's request actually is that BC's battalion chiefs would have to go in just like any other kind of protected leave, like bereavement leave, that kind of thing. A BC would have to actually enter it. So not BC's wouldn't necessarily say yes or no to the unprotected leave, but they would have to enter it on behalf of the employee. And the intent of that is just so they have more awareness if someone is using a lot of sick leave, maybe there's resources that they can be pointed to. Maybe they need to contact HR. Maybe we can get them on some kind of other protected leave, like such as FMLA, CFRA. If they're getting low on sick leave, we can, get them into the donated leave program. The whole intent behind it was to just have more awareness of someone that's in that unprotected sick leave usage area, if that makes sense. And then some other minor edits in the policy also included just changing the hours again, due to the MMP hours that were changed in the last round of contract negotiations. So that was the main one. And then, let's see here. And like I said, the second piece of this policy was the implementation of it. So HR has been working with staffing, payroll, and IT to make sure the system is up and running and the right drop-down boxes are there and it makes sense to everybody. And then Michelle Mahoney will start doing all the training for all the battalion chiefs to kind of walk them through the process of what happens when they need to actually enter the unprotected leave for an employee. And then, and that's all going to be done in collaboration with 522. So I could go through all the changes. Like I said, if you look at the policy, the new red line version in Outlook or in Word is different. And if you delete something, it kind of moves it off to the side. So it's kind of hard to follow. So that leads me to my question for the policy committee is, in the future, would you prefer to see just the strike through changes, or would you prefer the strike through version and a clean version? Do you want both, or would you just like the changes?
Okay, because I'm fine with this.
I'm an alternate. I'm good.
I'd say both because, that way you could, edit.
Okay,
Whatever you would prefer.
Yeah.
okay, so if you could provide both then.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause
we've
I-
done it both ways before
Yeah.
we had
Yeah.
both and then, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
But that's really the major changes of the policy. And like I said, this was done in collaboration with 522. Legal counsel on both sides have reviewed it. Everyone's happy with it. And we're excited that it's over after a year. It's one of those long ones. It just is what it is. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And again, both these policies don't need to go to full board. They're just for your review and your recommendations on any edits. So we don't need to take them to full board because they're just administrative policies.
I'm glad to see the update on the MMPs. Makes it a little, yeah, more equitable and also more protection for those guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
So help me understand. So they accrue 288 hours, 144 is protected. Say you're on C shift and every Thursday, Friday shift that you're scheduled, you call out sick. You don't require a medical leave, but there's a consistent
Pattern.
pattern,
Yeah.
right? The superior can't ask for.
We wouldn't recommend them to ask for any kind of documentation. It would probably be more of a discussion of, hey, is there something that I can help you with? I'm noticing this pattern. It could be as simple as maybe someone's going to treatments with their wife every once a week or something like that. And maybe that should be FMLA. So hopefully it'll help open the dialogue between supervisor and employee in an effort to help someone if they're using too much sick leave. But I wouldn't recommend asking for any documentation or anything like that. It shouldn't be punitive because the law is pretty clear that those 144 hours are protected, just like FMLA. So. Thanks to Michelle Mahoney.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So many of these changes will go into telestaff so that telestaff keeps track of a lot of these things and
Yes.
helps the BCs input it. in
Yes.
the correct area.
And they can run reports, and that'll be part of it. Michelle will be able to run reports either for them or she can show them how to run a report on just their crews. There's a lot of different things you can do in Telestaff. So
Since Telestaff is the program that does all of this
yes.
recording. Okay, thank you. That's
Yep.
all I have.
Yep.
Do you have another question?
No, no.
Okay, no
Well,
question.
Great presentation, thank you.
Very, very good. Does anyone else have anything else? Okay,
Thank you, directors.
thank you very much for that. We can move on to the next meeting date is June 13th in this room before our next, that board meeting on June 13th. I now say that we are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.